I was watching MMA Shay, and I was watching him talk about his top 17 most effective, best fighters of all time, in his opinion. And one thing he talked about was actually Hamzat Chimaev, which was on that list. And he was talking about like how Chimaev was obviously very effective, but in his fights, he didn't really prove much in the striking, which is why he wasn't, number one, even though he was like the best grappler of all time. Something like that, something along those lines. But one thing that he said that stood out to me was like that his wins weren't that good and that he hasn't proven too much in terms of legacy wins. And that's actually something that I had a problem with because I think that Hamza Chimaev currently is on one of the best winning streaks of all time in terms of his last three wins. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. As you can see in the title, guys, I'm going to be going over some big fighters. You're probably going to know all of them. But what are the top three, or what are the best three fight win streaks ever that a fighter has gone on? And that's what we're going to be discussing today. So let's just get into it, guys. First off, we're going to go with Ilia Topuria, guys. Ilia Topuria, our boy El Matador Ilia Topuria, who unfortunately is going through some wife-beating allegations right now, but that's okay. I hope that he can deal with that and come back. But anyway, with Topuria, man, obviously he's the most well-known example. Everyone's talking about his three-fight win streak. Volk, Max, Charles, amazing wins. I don't think I need to talk about this too much, but I just want to reiterate that these three wins are like arguably the best three wins in a row of all time. I mean, it's crazy. Volkanovski, yes, he was coming off the Islam Makhachev knockout, the head kick, but he was still pretty good. Like he wasn't washed at that point. That version of Volkanovski would have danced around Diego Lopez and beaten his ass for 5 rounds, just like he did the year after. So he like there's no there's no version of Volk that would have saved him from that punch that Ilia Topuria landed that night that knocked him out. Prime Volkanovski, the one that beat Max Holloway in the trilogy, that version of Volk would have gotten slept by Ilia Topuria pretty much just as quickly, in my opinion. Maybe he would have lasted like a round longer just because he might have been a little more fast, a little more confident, a little more pep in his step, But ultimately, Topuria still would have beaten Volk. That was a good version of Volk that he knocked out that night, coming off a full training camp. And then he beats Max Holloway, who, in my opinion, is currently at his best. His chin might not be as good as it used to be. He might not be as much of a fucking like tank, but he's still like offensively he's better and defensively he's way better now. Like his footwork is great defensively. I talked about this the other day. The way he L steps and the way he can like circle around the cage is something that I haven't seen from many other fighters, and he can avoid big shots. He's really good at circling away from shots to take the sting off of them. And that's something he developed over the past few years. That's something he developed after losing to Volk the third time. And he's now less reliant on his chin and more reliant on his movement, his defense, as well as the fact that he has more power now. And I know that wasn't the case against Topuria because obviously that was at featherweight. Still a great version of Max. Still the version that KO'd Gagey the fight prior. And a great version of Max as well. And then Charles Oliveira, we saw how his next fight went. We saw that he destroyed Gamrot. So Charles was really great as well. Like he's not in his prime anymore, but he's still good enough to be easily a top 2 or 3 fighter at lightweight. I think he's the third best fighter at lightweight currently, including Ilia Topuria. And yeah, man. That's going to be Ilia Topuria, some of the best wins of all time, 3 in a row, to be exact. But let's move on, guys, to someone I just mentioned, which is going to be Hamza Chimaev. And this is something that I kind of made this whole video just because I wanted to talk about this. I don't think that people talk about his last 3 wins enough, honestly. People think of Hamza as like, obviously he's a monster. He's probably the best grappler, like the best pure grappler that the sport has ever seen. I don't think that's ridiculous to say. But people don't talk about just like low-key how good his resume is. Like people talk about like, yeah, he's amazing. He's great in terms of his skill set. He's a monster. But like he still has work to do and he's not considered an all-time great yet. I think he's arguably in like the top 30 or the top 4, like not 40 is a lot of fighters, right? I think he's arguably in the top 30 fighters of all time just based on his last 3 wins, man. Usman, Whitaker, DDP, those are no joke, bro. And I know Whitaker particularly has not looked his best, as of late. But remember that Hamza ended Whitaker's, like, I think it was 2 or 3 fight win streak, and he was on a pretty good title. Like, he was on his way back to the title before he ran into Hamza. Remember how he had just beaten Paulo Costa? Basically, like, okay, I know Costa's not that, like, whoa, Paulo Costa. Who does that to Paulo Costa, right? But, like, on a real note, Costa's not bad, bro. Like, people shit on Costa a lot, but he just beat Roman Kopylov pretty convincingly. And I think Costa's very underrated. And the fact that Whitaker was able to go into the pocket, scrap with Costa, who's a pretty powerful guy, and definitely has the size advantage over Whitaker, went in there with the bigger guy, outboxed him for 5 rounds, outstruck him for 5 rounds, showed that he has a pretty deep striking bag and one of the best striking bags at middleweight and in the upper weight classes. And then he went on to knock out Ikram Alaskarov, another great win, a great finish from Whitaker. And then he runs into Hamza. So at that point, Hamza was fighting a pretty decent version of Whitaker. I think he's much more washed than he was back then when he fought Chimaev. And yeah, I think Whitaker's kind of lost it now. Like that loss to RDR isn't the best look, especially after RDR just gassed out against Allen. Um, but I digress. Whitaker, I think at that point was still pretty good, like a year and a half ago. But aside from that, he beat Usman in DDP, bro. And Usman's the second greatest welterweight of all time by consensus. I think it's pretty clear. Um, and Usman, like, I know people are gonna say he was already on a losing streak at that point, but that was an amazing version of Usman. Like, I don't care what anyone says. First of all, Usman came back after that and beat Buckley very convincingly. But honestly, like, even like, okay, he was coming off 2 losses to Leon Edwards, right? Which that isn't the best look, but 2 fights before he fought Hamza, he was the champion, and he was like the reigning undisputed, basically unbeatable champion at welterweight. And he lost to Leon in a fight that he was dominating. Okay, he got caught by a head kick, and then he lost by decision, and that's the one loss that you can't really excuse. But it's not like he had taken like life-changing damage between those 2 fights. And it's Leon Edwards. Come on, he's not gonna hurt you that bad, bro. If we're being honest, he's not gonna hurt you that bad. And then he fights Hamza, and it's upper weight class, but like honestly, that just means that Usman didn't have to cut that much weight because you know Usman walks around at like 190, 200. The guy's a big fucking welterweight, bro. And this was both fighters' first time or first fight at middleweight at that point. And Usman had that lighter man skill, bro. And I think that to be able to he showed his skill in the fight against Hamza, like to be able to survive the first round, defend all of the submissions, have the awareness in the grappling to slam Hamza down from almost being rear naked choked standing, to slam him down, and then to survive the rest of the round on bottom, even though he was getting hammer fisted, and then come back and win the next 2 rounds, outstriking Hamza, defending the takedowns, holding the body lock when he did get taken down. I think Usman, that was a good version of Usman that Hamza beat, and that was a championship level of Usman. Like that version of Usman was not too far off from like his championship run. And then you have like Whitaker, right, who I just talked about, and it's the way he beat Whitaker. It's the way he subbed him in a round. And I know that like it was kind of fluky the way that Whitaker's chin or like his jaw kind of broke in, and he had those faulty teeth already. But like it doesn't matter, bro. Like he still would have subbed Whitaker. I'll be honest, like in that the way he mat returned Whitaker after um Whitaker had gotten up from the first takedown, like the speed at which he shot that takedown was ridiculous. It was monstrous, bro. And at that point, when he got the submission, there was still like 1 or 2 minutes on the clock. Like Whitaker wasn't making it out of that round, bro. And if he did, I mean, like people keep like hyping or not hyping, but they keep like emphasizing Hamzat's like cardio issues. We kind of saw in his last fight, the cardio wasn't an issue. If Whitaker had survived the first round somehow, which I don't think he would have gotten taken down, and the same shit would have happened in the second round. He would have gotten subbed as well. Um, and then with DDP, obviously, I don't really need to talk about how good of a fighter DDP is. He was on a crazy run of his own. I thought he was gonna beat Hamzat. He had just come off that like dominant win over Sean Strickland. And by the way, outstriking Strickland for 5 rounds, 50-45ing him is crazy. Like that is an accomplishment on its own that people don't talk about enough. Landing on Strickland cleanly is very hard. He's one of the best like defensive fighters in the upper weight classes. And landing on him consistently over 5 rounds, that's a different story. That's very impressive. And I'm surprised DDP was able to do that. Before that, he had beaten Adesanya, outstruck him on the feet, submitted him, and then before that, he had dogged out Whitaker and destroyed him, TKO'd him. Like, DDP is one of the best middleweights of all time. And doing that to DDP, the way that he did DDP was it was like impressive. It was boring as fuck, don't get me wrong. It was very boring, but it was impressive. Like you can't not be impressed by that performance. DDP didn't land a single he landed like one good strike on Hamzat that entire fight, which is pretty crazy. But that's Hamzat, guys. And we got three more fighters I want to talk about. The first one being Islam Makhachev. And I'm talking about his 3 wins in a row over Charles Oliveira, Volkanovski, and Dustin Poirier, guys. Charles Oliveira, at that point, that was prime Charles. He was on his 11-fight win streak. That was pissed off Charles, bro. Like, the fight before, he had just destroyed Gaethje in a round. Showed up in the red suit, destroyed Gaethje. He's yelling, "Where's my belt? Where's my belt?" Like, that was prime, like, 33-year-old Charles, who was basically the champion. Like, if we're being honest, like, yeah, he got stripped. Everyone knew he was the champion of the division. He was the best in the division at the time. And for Islam to come out and basically render Oliveira useless on the feet. Islam is really good at making you pay on the back foot. He can be moving backwards. And Charles Oliveira, obviously, he's always going to push the pace. He's always going to move forward. He was trying so hard and so desperately to catch Islam with a big shot, and he couldn't hit him clean once, and that's insane. Islam is one of the best defensive fighters. Like, if Sean Strickland is the best defensive fighter welterweight and up, or I guess middleweight and up, now that Islam has moved to welterweight, then Islam would be the best defensive fighter welterweight and downwards, in my opinion. And the guy didn't get hit one time in that whole fight with Oliveira, outstruck him on the back foot, which nobody expected at the time. Landed clean shots at him, frustrated Oliveira to the point where he threw that dumb jump knee that didn't even come close to making it to Islam's face, anywhere close to that. Paid for it, got caught with a hook, dropped him, and then submits the most prolific, most dangerous submission artist in the game at that point. And that was insane. That was very impressive. Then to go on to beat Volkanovski in his prime, coming off that 6-month training camp, coming off the best performance in his career over Max Holloway, 50-45ing Max Holloway, who had bulked up to lightweight, packed on muscle, was leaned out. A monster who isn't getting submitted, who's like a little fucking tank, right? Volkanovski is like a 5'6" tank. He's popping up from any position that you're taking him down in. You're just not gonna sub him, and he's gonna push the pace and pressure you until you break with elite level striking and elite level takedowns. And to be able to outstrike him on the feet and time the takedowns and control him on the ground is no one else is ever doing that to Volkanovski again. Not even like someone like Poirier, you can knock him out, right? That's a different level of crazy, but you're not beating Volkanovski by outclassing him on the feet and on the ground in that same way that Islam did in that first fight. That's just never going to happen again. And that never would have happened if it was any other fighter besides Islam. And yeah, I'm not really going to talk about that second Volk fight because honestly, like, I don't regard it too much as like something that counts towards Islam's legacy too much. But it did happen, right? And then you have Dustin Poirier, who I know Dustin Poirier was like supposed to get subbed in like a round. But dude, Poirier is one of my favorite fighters. If you guys don't know, I mean, you know, you see the channel picture, you see Poirier. Like, I love Poirier. He's basically my favorite fighter of all time. I love the guy. He's just a cool dude, bro. He's just a chill dude. Like, he's so funny, bro. Like, the way he's like a salty winner. I can't do the impressions like Bedtime can, like Guru can, but like he's so funny, bro. I fuck with Dustin Poirier so much. And like, yeah, like he was good, bro. Like, even though he was kind of old at that point, he wasn't really in his prime anymore. It was a great version of Poirier. And it was like the craftiest version of Poirier. In Lucas Tracy terms, it was the craftiest version of him. Like, he had that takedown defense on point. Training with Gamrot, that whole camp really paid off for him. He was able to kind of limp leg his way out of those single legs, stuff the takedowns, see them coming. He did get taken down in the first round and controlled, but he defended the submissions with the most dangerous submission artist at lightweight on his back for like 5 minutes. He was able to defend that beautifully. And then go on to stuff like 80 or 90% of the takedowns that Islam was going for him. Right? At least that's what it seemed like. And to last almost the entire 25 minutes was Islam. That's something very impressive in his own right. And Poirier, that was like the craftiest version of Poirier. And he was coming off that win over BSD, the knockout, which by the way, that's aged really well as well. BSD is going on a great run in his own right. And yeah, man, Poirier, that was a good version of Poirier. And Islam was able to pretty much 50-45 him, beat him every round because I honestly don't give Poirier a single round that fight. Like the judge that gave it 2-2 going into the fifth is bugging. Like it was not 2-2 going. Maybe you could have given, I forgot which round it was. Was it 3 or 4? It was the round where like pretty much Islam was outboxing him and outlanding him. Poirier would land one, Islam would land like two or three, and like Islam would just have more moments than Poirier for like 4 minutes of that round, and then Poirier would like at the end of the round he like backed Islam to the fence. Islam grabbed the tie clinch, and then Poirier kind of ripped Islam to the body with that boxing combo. Like the one where Theo Vaughn was like kind of controlling him from the crowd. If you've seen those videos, that's what is like that was that moment. Poirier was ripping Islam to the body with the hooks, and then he lands the big elbow, which is like basically his biggest moment of the fight. Cuts Islam right over his left eye, I believe, and like you can still see that scar to that day. It was a pretty deep scar, and um, that was like a very memorable moment. But I would still give Islam that round just because he landed more damage. Like yes, that was a lot of damage that Poirier landed at the end of the round, but Islam was just cleanly and more consistently beating him that round. And I would just say it was like 50-45. Or no, I guess not 50-45, but it was like it was 4-0 going into the fifth for Islam. And yeah, man, it was a great version of Poirier that Islam beat. So those three wins in a row are amazing as well. But then let's move on to Charles Oliveira, guys. The guy's had a long career, bro. The guy's been in the UFC for a long ass time. And I'm going to say that his championship run is actually underrated. Because at this point, people kind of like, it hasn't aged the best. Like, I actually think that Chandler, Poirier, and Gaethje are three great wins at the time that he beat them, right? And that's very important because I know they like all of these guys went on to lose fights after this as well. But come on, like Chandler, like at that point when he was on his run 2021, 2022, these guys were all at their peak. And these were like, they were very elite. If they're, okay, damn, I have CTE, bro. If these three guys were in their prime in 2024 or 2025, they would be running the division currently. Like Patty wouldn't be in the conversation. He would have been beat. Like I would be like, honestly, if Patty like fought Prime Poirier, fought Prime Gaethje, or Prime Chandler, genuinely I'd probably pick Prime Chandler to beat Patty. It's just that the way Chandler was fighting and he was so old when he was fighting Patty, like I don't know, like I feel like Prime Chandler, the one versus Oliveira in that first fight, could have honestly chinned Patty, or at least done much better. And I rate these wins pretty highly, dude. Prime Chandler, who actually moved forward and tried to land big shots, unlike the Chandler who fought Oliveira the second time, who was trying to be all like technical on the outside and like kickbox with Charles, which was just dumb. Like you're not getting any, like if you're Chandler, the only way you're succeeding is brawling and getting a first round knockout. And that was what almost happened versus Oliveira the first time, but obviously Oliveira showing that grit, coming back and chinning Chandler in the second round. But then you have like that Poirier win, and that was prime Poirier. In my opinion, that was definitely prime Poirier. In his physical prime, he was like 33 or something. He was like in the middle of his prime, coming off those Conor McGregor knockouts. He had kind of super rocketed to stardom at that point. Like that's when he became a big star, when he beat Conor McGregor those two times in 2021. And he had that beef with Conor, and like he knocked on. He's like, not McGregor fast, McGregor sleep, right? That was prime Poirier, and he really wanted that title, bro. Like you saw how heartbroken he was when he lost to Habib for the title, and this was his chance. And honestly, Charles is a more beatable. At least he seemed like a more beatable fighter than Habib. And Poirier was doing well in that fight, dude. He was outboxing Charles by a little bit, right? That first round was closer than people remember. Charles was landing a lot too, but Poirier was just landing power, like the more powerful shots than Charles. And he dropped him, like, I think it was one time, but he dropped him and hurt him pretty badly. That was prime Poirier. And then Charles went on to win the next round, control him on the ground. I know he did glove grab him, which was pretty dirty, but and that's kind of how he secured the takedown and got to full mount in the second round versus Poirier. But he landed good elbows and guard, man, and it was a good round for him. And then he went out there and subbed Poirier really quickly in the third when Poirier was kind of gassed. Great performance by Charlie Olives. And then Gagey, that was prime Gagey as well. That was Gagey post Tony Ferguson when he was very measured. He made those like fundamental adjustments in his boxing with Trevor Whitman. He was a lot more patient. He got his timing down. And he hurt Oliveira a couple times, bro, but it wasn't enough. And he got chinned by Oliveira and subbed by him in the same round, in the same fight. And that was when Oliveira was looking like a monster, bro. And these three wins, they're just at all three of these fighters, Chandler, Poirier, and Gagey, at their primes, they were actually very good and very elite. I will say Chandler maybe wasn't on par with Poirier and Gagey at any point in their careers, but Chandler was still a solid win. In his prime, Chandler was still a solid win. And then, lastly, guys, you might not expect this. My last fighter, who I'm going to say had one of the most underrated and one of the most best, one of the best three-fight win streaks in the UFC. Dude, I'm giving it to Dustin Poirier, bro. I'm giving it to my boy DP, bro. Shine bright like a diamond, bro. Because I believe that his wins over Gagey, Eddie Alvarez, and Max Holloway are actually extremely underrated and one of the best of all time. Gagey, I think he's a top 30 fighter of all time. Very solid fighter. I don't know. I think Eddie Alvarez gave Gagey his first loss. I can't remember though, but Gagey was like 18-1 or something at that point, and that was young Gagey. He was wild. I know that Gagey was improved in the next time they fought, and Gagey knocked him out, but that was still a good version of Gagey. And physically, he had less mileage on him in terms of just damage. So like he had a better chin in that fight for sure. Um, and yeah, he was just very powerful. And he back then he would hammer low kicks a lot more. Like he would really go for those calf kicks. And he really would he would kind of just put his chin on the line, but he would punish you with those leg kicks. And that was his whole game plan. And he would really put you in wobbly legs early. And yeah, Poirier goes to war with that version of Gagey and then knocks him out. A very impressive fight. And then he beats Alvarez, former champion. And then he beats Holloway, who we all know he's a top 10 fighter of all time, extremely skilled. And that was Holloway. That was like, I know Holloway was like coming up on short notice and was kind of fat. It wasn't the best version of Holloway, but the guys that like, that was when he was champ, bro. That was Holloway. That was like Marauder Holloway when his chin was still there and he had that iron chin that you couldn't crack. And Poirier was rocking him around, bro, and beating him for a good majority of the fight. I know that Max Holloway came back and won like the last round. He won a couple rounds. And he almost darced Poirier at one point, I think. But like he was like that was a very good version of Max Holloway and very elite. And in his prime in the middle of his championship run. So yeah, man. Those three wins were amazing as well. Dustin Poirier is one of the best fighters to never win a championship. And I know that's really like I know everyone says that, but honestly, it is true. Like it's him, it's Gagey. Honestly, Gagey's really good. It's Armin. These guys are all really great fighters who've never won a championship. But I think the greatest one is Dustin Poirier, guys. And these three fights were amazing as well. A great three-fight win streak for the boy DP. And yeah, guys, that's gonna be it. I'm kind of yapping. I'm kind of rambling now. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. Let me know what you guys want me to talk about next. If you have any suggestions, let me know, guys. And yeah, we're gonna have to find more ways to get through this UFC drought until 324, I believe. But yeah, see you guys in the next video. And yeah, thank you for watching, bro.